All right, we are live for the Friday edition of the Mike and Mario Show. And as always, looking forward to connecting and going through this past week, as well as looking ahead as to what is what are we facing. But other than that, before we dive further, Mario, how you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Observing the world, which is getting more hectic, chaotic, and deceptive. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing good, my friend. Apart from just the continuous being bombarded with all types of information from different sources, yeah, I'm getting used to it by now, man. But give me 1 second here. I'm hearing some feedback on my side. Give me 1 second here. Okay. All right. Let me close the windows out. Too many windows open. But other than that, I'm doing well. Yeah, as always, man. That this week was very interesting. Everything from the Fed, minute Fed not doing anything for 4 straight meetings. Then we have the bank sell off. Then we have here we got the border issue, which is still on a lot of people's minds. Then we got the possibility of a new war. Yeah, man. Just
And
what's new?
the peasants are revolting in Europe, or the
Oh,
farmers peasant revolt. I mean, which is ironic. It was something that happened a lot in the Middle Ages, but you wouldn't expect it now. But
yeah.
because of the globalist policy of climate change and saying that farming is bad for the environment, we're getting blowback, and I think that's really interesting. And we got also the great job numbers that came out today.
Oh. Yeah. Through the roof, surprise everybody, even the people who punched it into the keyboard. It was like, what? You want to put this out there? Sure. Okay, so we got a lot of things to cover. As always, for those who are plugged in, if you haven't, definitely hit the thumbs up button, show your support for the channels. And then also feel free to have thoughts, ideas, suggestions. We'll put it in the chat. And then when we get to the Q&A portion, we'll do some face-to-face, letting you guys join us on screen, or you can highlight some questions in the chat. And we're going to make the best of this time this Friday afternoon. And let's dive into, I guess, those jobs figures and talk about, what reality is really looking like as far as the amount of layoffs is going on. But let me make sure everything's moving forward. Make sure everything is good on my side here. All right, I see a couple people here from Pittsburgh. Appreciate you. All right, let's jump in, Mario. So, I guess the surprise of the day. We'll work from today and work our way backwards throughout the week. And so January jobs report, U.S. economy adds 353,000 jobs, blowing past Wall Street expectations. It's a miracle. The economy is recovering. We couldn't be better. Biden economy is just, everything is some hunky-dory, huh?
Yeah, that's right. And are they going to have to raise rates then, the Federal Reserve, because we've got the NASDAQ at all-time highs. We got the economy doing so well. Why are people talking about cutting rates? So unfortunately, I think these numbers, it is a survey. It's a business survey. They go out and ask businesses what their hiring plans are, and they extrapolate the survey. I've heard that a lot of businesses have stopped answering the Bureau of Labor Statistics because they feel they're manipulating it. And then you have the other survey, which is the household survey, where they go door to door and ask people, are you working? Did you get a job? I read someone on LinkedIn just before we came on that in the last 2 months, the household survey, you've had over 700,000 jobs lost. While in this non-farm payroll business survey, they've gained like 668,000. So which one is right? And and you sent me that article, if you want to show about the fact that you had a lot of layoffs in January. Like in one sector, it was the biggest layoffs since 2009. So that doesn't really like equate with these numbers. And what I'm afraid this is going to do, it's going to give the wrong diagnosis about the economy, and it could actually backfire massively on the Biden administration. We could have a massive collapse because investors, consumers, businesses, they're all getting the wrong signal. They don't know what is going on.
Yeah. Man, so you laid out a lot of things there. Man, just one by one. So laying a narrative. And so like it can backfire. So let's talk about that for a minute. So if the economy is doing so good according to these figures that they're trying to, sail the world on, then I think I got an article or something about, the expectations for a pivot are still relatively high in comparison to what Jerome Powell led it to be, as far as them saying they possibly see 3, but markets predicting 5, and it used to be 6. But so if this is a presidential year, they need a narrative going into the remainder of this year that things are looking good. Start off with January, jobs are through the roof. Then we'll see what happens next. And then really what's another point they're trying to sail the public on is the need to get out and defend lives lost in the Middle East. So literally they're bombarding us with 3 images of people who lost their lives. And so they're trying to build up that patriotic approach of we need to go stop that, whatever. So I'm assuming between a booming economy, according to what we're being told, the need to defend our borders and everything else from the Middle East standpoint is something they're going to use to rally on for this presidential election, because the banking sector, which we're going to get into in a moment, predicts something completely different. So the distortion in the distortion of reality is what we're dealing with now, like literally monetary twilight zone, because they're trying to paint a positive picture. Reality is the quite opposite. But then in the middle, you got people who, unfortunately, on this side of the planet, they're not really concerned with anything outside their comforts and everyday living. So I'm not quite sure how this will play out. But I think January, like these numbers here, and I got another chart that actually lists all the companies that announced that they're making cuts. And it's just the beginning. And so how can you hide this is the question. Like, how can you hide this? And of course, the unemployment numbers are going to shoot up through the roof as people begin to file for unemployment as these layoffs kick in. But once again, it just, nothing makes sense. And it's hard to put all these stories together to make them equal something that's sound and rational.
Yeah, they can't hide it from people who watch these things like we do, or even people on Wall Street and economists, even though a lot of them are going to go along with it. But I think it's getting more and more difficult for an economist to sit there on CNBC or Bloomberg and say that the economy is doing really well. And I think one of the things that these people don't understand, the bureaucrats and the people in the administration, the treasury, is financial markets, how they work and how they react to the economic data. For example, as we speak here, the 10-year yield is up almost 20 basis points. The 2-year yield is up 20. The 1-year T-bill yield is up 15 basis points. So they're buying into the White House, and the people at the Treasury are buying into this thing that there's no inflation, so bond markets are under control. But as we're seeing here, this number is like really hit the bond market. And what does that mean for the government? Well, more deficit spending. Why more deficit spending? Well, because the financing all the $6 trillion in total that they have this year, it's going to cost more. So that's why I said, they do this, they manipulate everything, and it's going to come back to haunt them. And in terms of what you're saying there about the conflict in the Middle East, how they, and I'm not saying that lives don't matter, but you don't remember, but I remember vaguely Vietnam. Thousands and, I don't know, tens of thousands of Americans died, but there's no there was outrage. The hippies protested and all that, but the establishment didn't care. And now you have 3 people like dying, and I know it's bad, but they're making a huge deal out of it to justify more. And they call it, they want to stop the escalation, but by bombing people more in the Middle East, it's only going to escalate things. But we know, Mike, that war is a racket, according to Smedley Butler. And I think it's one of the things they think that they can keep the economy going. I saw earlier this week that the IMF revised the Russian economy, and they're doing really well. Why is the Russian economy doing well? Well, they're spending a lot in the current war against Ukraine. So there you go. War is profitable, but not for the public, of course.
Yeah, and I also factor in, their economy overall, as far as their interaction with those friendly countries, as far as oil exports, grain sent all around the world. Business is still flowing. People are still paying for their goods and services that is being exploited, utilized around the world. So
yeah, and Russia has very little public debt. I think it's below 20%.
Yeah. And speaking of, let me just pull up here. This is a very detailed and thorough breakdown of all the layoffs that have been announced thus far, just within the last 30 days of, or January rather. So just this week we had PayPal. They're talking about 12,000 layoff coming up, and they just in August had a pay wage increase of an all-time high for I think six-figure salaries for the most part for those that have been part of UPS for quite some time, but they're cutting somewhere. iRobot laid off 31%, Salesforce lays off, Business Insider lays off, Time Magazine, SAP, Vroom, Los Angeles Times. So I can go on and on and on, but this is a very detailed list of everybody within the month of January that's announced cuts. And so, how can these jobs be doing so well? But then again, we know that everything is made to make things appear one way, while in the reality is complete opposite. So, let's go back further, man. I guess the exposure to the commercial real estate is really starting to hit home. And midweek, we had what looks like the beginning or the continuation from last year, but just a different episode or whatever, we'll see. But regional bank stocks were crashing midweek. And so we had New York Community Bank, which got the most attention. Then we got New York Community Bank here. No, I'm sorry, Azura Bank. Then we got New York Community Bank here. Then we got Western Alliance Corp, Bancorp. And then just some overall trajectory of a few different banks here. And so ultimately, the banks are starting to hemorrhage. They're hemorrhaging big time due to the losses they have incurred with all that debt that have been taken out. So how do you hide this? So this is so if the jobs are doing so well, amongst all these changes in the banking sector, it's good to say that there's going to be even more layoffs announced from that sector there. The tech sectors, of course, was the list that I showed before. But how can you hide these when people will actually be feeling the pain? And the people who are being laid off, you better believe they're going to look for someone to blame. It's going to be hard to point towards Biden as the one who has such a great economy. If I'm unemployed, laid off, pockets is hurting, you know how that story goes. But so once again, how does this equal a good presidential run for him, if that's even something he's even concerned with at this point?
Yeah, I've heard rumors that Michelle Obama is going to be the next candidate. And that they're going to announce it in May or something. So, but you mentioned commercial real estate. We've known since last year, when SVB, First Republic, and Signature Bank collapsed, that the smaller banks have the most exposure to commercial real estate. The likes of JP Morgan and Bank of America don't. It's not a big part of their business. But I was reading an article you sent me. There's $3 trillion in commercial real estate loans due by 2027. And the experts, a billionaire there and others, are predicting a haircut of 700 billion to $1 trillion in the value of these loans. It's going to be. I'm not sure how that will impact the labor market, but it will definitely impact the balance sheets of these banks. And how can they hide it? Well, the Fed will just come up with another scheme that they will call not QE. Just to save them, they might extend the BTFP, or they might let that roll out and then create another one and call it something else. I'm sure, or the Treasury could work with the Fed to keep these basically zombie banks going. So it's like they're juggling plates and stuff. They're just desperate to keep things going until November. And I think the statistics today show that as well. I'm not sure many thinking people that are not compromised, working for mainstream media or the big banks, believe these numbers are true.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, that's we will see. But I want to dive into some of these things. I just highlight a few things here to really show how uh, bad things are in the commercial real estate, and of course, the multifamily home lending area. Then, of course, down to residential will be impacted. So it's just not isolated in the commercial real estate. But it says that 560 billion property warning hits banks from New York to Tokyo. And of course, leading off with New York Communities Bank, and their stock was down 38% on Wednesday. And I looked at it a moment ago, and it's still not looking like something that I would be willing to buy at this current moment. And I'll be making a lot of jokes about how I'm waiting on any minute for it to go a little lower so I can buy the dip, in hopes of the Fed come in and save the day. But I'm just playing. But let me get here. So yeah, just talks more about this. But one of the things it says banks are facing roughly 516 billion in commercial real estate maturities by the end of 2025. And then it talks more about that the KBW Regional Banking Index slumped by 6% on Wednesday, and it's a measurement of all the regional banks that's part of this index here. And I noticed that on their fund they don't go out beyond looks like 5 days. So they keep everything short. So I can't go back into history and see the gyrations and fluctuations that I'm sure the index has.
Well, you can if you Google KBW Bank Index, it will bring you the index on the chart. For example, I've got it here. In the last year, is down 18%.
Put it in the private chat because I couldn't find that.
You have to. Let's see. Let me copy that. Where is the private chat? Okay. All right, you should have it there.
Okay, let me bring this up here. Good find. All right, so I see it here. All right,
yeah,
so
it's up today a little bit, but if you did the 1 year, I mean that's on the left hand side there, and that's what last year when everything went down, and it hasn't. It's rebounded from there, but it looks like it's keeling over to me. It's topping there, and it's.
Yeah, I would be willing to bet that it's trending down before up, given all the conditions that we're talking about here.
Yeah, especially with the approach of March 11th is when they going to phase out BTFP.
Good point. And speaking of which, let me get to the next article that I wanted that you hinted at. But billionaire Sternlich, if I'm saying that incorrectly, sees 1 trillion losses in office values. So these are some pretty big people out here talking about what's going on. And I know that this says the office market has a existential crisis right now, which is largely a U.S. phenomenon because workers haven't gone back to their desks yet. But whatever.
Well, I think it's happening here in London as well. In the city of London, we have a lot of buildings empty. Even during lockdown, I spoke to some builders, and they're saying they're still building during lockdown in London, which is crazy.
Yeah, good luck with that.
So his name is Starlight.
Starlight.
That's Sternlicht in German is Starlight.
I would have butchered that one. But last year it says the office market I already mentioned that part here. It says once a $3 trillion asset class, offices now are probably worth $1.8 trillion. It says there's a $1.2 trillion of losses spread world somewhere, and nobody knows exactly where it all is. So those losses, approximately $1.2 trillion. So where are they? They're on the regional banks or the smaller banks, more than likely. And I wanted to then go to, here's a chart of the list of the largest banks in the United States. And I was just thumbing through them, just seeing which stories have hit the news lately. And so the New York Community Bank is number 34 on this list. And then we go down a little further. I see a couple names we're familiar with. Where was the other ones at? Some of the banks already blew up. What we got here? Where we go? Where they go? But these are a lot of banks, and it's good to say a good portion of these banks are the ones holding those losses that he's referring to. Where's that? I can't find it now. But anyway, point of the story is we got the too big to fails at the top with the trillions. Then we got the high 100 billions, and then we get into the smaller boys where the losses, I'm sure, will be exposed real soon. Real soon.
Well, subprime was kind of like that. The crisis of 08. It started with the small subprime lenders, and it spread. Subprime. So it's like contagion. It can, these are smaller banks. People might think, oh, it's not going to affect the too big to fail, but you never know. It's called contagion, and it could happen very quickly.
Yeah, very true. Very true. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's get to some other stories here. What else we got here? What else stories I got? What do you want to take it next?
Do you want to look a little bit into the farmers' protests in Europe?
Definitely. Let me pull some stuff up here. I got them on my radar here. The video footage coming out of, let me know if you are also seeing the same thing, because I'm noticing that for the most part, the best, not best, but most reliable, somewhat reliable source of information is coming from X these days. Like we would know nothing about the protest that's taking place in Europe if it wasn't for people sharing video footage. And you sent me this one here about what's happening in France and how the police appear to be standing down and in support of those that are protesting what's going on in that country there. So
and it's spreading as well now. I think it's spread to Belgium, of course, even Portugal, Germany, Poland. You kind of wonder if it's going to spread here. And I've looked at the mainstream, the newspapers. They write about it. A lot of them just say that, the French farmers, for example, are unhappy about costs being too high and regulation. But then sometimes they mention, the environmental rules, that they have to follow for this net zero. And I think that's what it's all about, is the net zero thing that's basically killing these farmers. They want to impose this net zero green agenda where farming is supposedly bad. And these people are saying this is ridiculous. Without food, we can't eat. Without farmers, you don't get food. And without food, what we're going to eat. So I think this is encouraging because it's exposing this Davos World Economic Forum climate change globalist agenda. And I think what's happening also at the southern border in the U.S. is related to this, because the globalists don't want a strong United States. And I think that letting all these people through the border, illegal aliens, is part of it as well. So they're all related. And we've had as well maybe you can talk about the truckers going, the convoys going down to the border in Mexico. I think that's very similar to that.
So I talked about. So I approach everything with a grain of skepticism, because whatever is usually promoted and pushed our way is used typically to cover up or to hide something else. And so the truckers convoy, like I haven't even noticed, because typically it would be in my feed, because I do follow things like that. But it's other than mid-January it popped up, but nothing that has really circulated as of now. So I'm typing it in as we speak. But I was concerned because we got a lot of people with good intentions going to that area in support of Texas, as well as showing protests against our government. Okay, cool. But then again, everything has been focused on a single entry point in El Paso, Texas, where the barbed wire, the barricades, and all of that National Guard troops are being sent to. But I'm thinking the entire border from California to Texas is very, 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 very long. And why are the media focusing on that point? And why is Abbott being painted as the hero for pushing back against the government? It's okay.
You're right to be skeptical, because it could be a trap. just like January 6th, right?
Yeah. So, and also we got DeSantis just yesterday announced that he's sending more reinforcements. I think 1,000 new national state guards. So he sent several different tiers of people to Texas, going back to 2021. And so if we got 25 states, literally all in support of Abbott, and they got several states sending aid and support. But then again, what about the other states along the Mexican border? Like, there's more states. What about the other states that board, like New Mexico, and we got Nevada? They all board Mexico as well. And the gate that's up there, I saw video footage that somebody shared from Texas, and he drove past the El Paso, Texas site, which is a bridge. Military presence was there, barbed wire fence. He drove a half a mile along that same wall there, gates wide open. Then he kept driving another quarter of a mile, gate wide open. What even a gate there? It was just, I'm thinking, like, why are they focusing on that where there's military presence? You can just walk a half a mile down and come on in. So it's no telling what's happening along that long stretch from Texas to California. I got video footage of people just walking around the gate in California. So it's like, come on now. Like, if it's really about protecting our country, secure the entire border, and let's deal with other issues as well within our country, because we don't know who and what has already landed. And I'm ranting a little bit, but I've seen video footage of people posting mugshots as well as camera captured video footage of people who are labeled as, cartels from this place, terrorists from this place. And so if that's true, that goes to my point of we don't know who's already here, what they have, what their intentions are, and what could come from that. So if there's issues happening in the EU, we can have issues here, but on a civil side of things of just some type of attack or whatever. And then I'm going to stop ranting with this whole response to the Iranian-backed Houthis. Iran made it clear that if there's a direct attack on land or in something with our country, it won't end here and it won't be peaceful how this ends out. And I'm thinking, like, okay, it kind of seemed like a threat. And I took it as, will he activate potentially some sleeper cells in the U.S.? So it goes deep, man. But I spent too much time thinking about this stuff. It looks like, because it's very concerning. Because once again, the mainstream media is focused on this, but yet people in Main Street are really focused on the border. I did a survey during the week asking people what's of more concern to them, and close to 50% was the border. Over the Middle East heights, over the Middle East, over the banking situation, over everything else, people are concerned with the border. So, anyway, I'll stop ranting. But these are just real things that people are concerned with. So, speaking of which,
I sent you something about the UK. Apparently, the mortgage rates are starting to rise again. The respite we had since the end of October seems to be over. And
okay, let me find that one. Let me see here. It's in the chat. Let me see. Let me grab it. I thought I grabbed everything, but I didn't.
And someone just noted here that there's a UK YouTube channel called Funky Prepper, and I've watched him. He's based here in the UK, and he's saying that English and Scottish farmers are also going to rise up. And he says, I also saw that the Welsh farmers had a meeting to see how they can protest against the Welsh sustainable farming. So it's spreading. It's like we're talking about the banks. It's like contagion. It feels like 1980s, late 80s, when all the Soviet bloc Eastern European countries started leaving, when communism started to fall. It was like a domino. And I sense that we are in historic times here, not just for Europe, but the US as well.
Yeah, I would agree. And also, I don't see that article.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's not that serious, but it just goes to show that the mainstream and like the real estate agents, they see interest rates dropping a little bit and they think, oh, it's great now. Rates are not going to go up anymore. But after today, I think they're going to have to be on the lookout, because bond yields are still rising and they're going to continue to rise. And the rise in bond yields today in the US, or fall in bond prices, is going to affect the bond markets in the UK and in Europe too.
Yeah, the debt contagion will not be isolated.
Yeah.
But so I didn't see the article, but I did want to mention this real quick. So I was talking earlier how it was we were waiting any minute for a response, and so other than just more rhetoric from headline mainstream news talking about something is planned, U.S. approves plan to strike Iranian targets in Syria and Iraq, officials say. So my question is, I'm just throwing some thoughts and ideas to you, Mario. If Syria and Iraq is going to be the primary targets that they're looking to respond to, of course, they're, according to the U.S. sources, they're Iranian-backed, whatever. But isn't it interesting how Iraq, over the last several months, if I'm not mistaken, has requested that the U.S. military leave their country?
Yeah, I've seen that.
So now they're about to start rebombing again in Iraq at the same time they've been asked to leave.
The United States foreign policy since George W. Bush has done so well, right, in liberating Iraq and making it democratic, that it's attracted the Iranians. This is their fault. And it's amazing because in the 80s, Iran and Iraq were enemies. I don't know if you remember the Iran-Iraq war. And now the Americans have succeeded in making them friends. But we've been hearing about this war with Iran for years, and it never seems to happen. And does that mean I want to see a war with them? No, I think they use that as an excuse to keep the military spending going, because it seems, and Israel comes out and says Iran is a threat. Iran has, it's almost like the new Putin, isn't it? Putin is blamed for everything, and now Iran is blamed for everything in the Middle East, even though the U.S. has bases all over the Middle East. Right. So I think, I'm not sure we're going to have a war with Iran, but
they want it. They would. I think they would welcome one. I think the U.S. globalist military industrial complex would welcome that, just because.
If there is a war with Iran, then that's unfortunately is going to be World War III. That's a biggie. Iran is not Afghanistan. Iran is an old empire, a big country, has a big army, and according to the Israelis, they have nuclear weapons as well, even though the Israelis have nuclear weapons too. So you can't blame Iran for that.
Right. And to highlight also on this, like, Iraq and Syria will be their primary targets. And once again, like, there was never any congressional approval whatsoever. I remember 4 years ago, it was taboo to even mention that we had forces in Syria, because it was hush hush during the whole presidential campaign before. But so it was always a small, what was it called? A small targeted strategic, whatever they labeled it as, for like a small unit or something like that. But now the unit has also gotten bigger, and they got bases and everything over there. But they were never welcomed or invited in Syria, and they were asked to leave Iraq. But then again, they're trying to enforce their presence again.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Iraqi president or prime minister, he's asked for the Americans to leave, but they're still there. And the Russians have a presence in Syria, but they've been invited by Assad.
And if Russia wasn't there, the U.S. would have took Assad out, and they would have, it would have been a lot uglier than what it is now, I think.
You probably seen this. It's from years ago. General Wesley Clark, he's being interviewed, and he talks about the day or when he went to the Pentagon after 9/11, and he spoke to the generals there, and they said, well, we have a plan to go into Iraq, Iran, Syria, all these 7 countries. And he told us the playbook. Wesley Clark, he was the head of I think NATO at one point. So I think Iran has been a problem because they haven't, and Syria, because they haven't been able to get rid of it as quickly as they wanted it. Yeah, they wanted to do it in 5 years, and here we are 10, 15 years later, and Iran hasn't been knocked off by the neocons yet.
Yeah, but so all the other countries on our list have all gone through some changes. So Iran is the last one standing. Somalia, Sudan. I don't even talk about that because I know there's always some type of
Yeah.
revolution. So they have a lot of cultural clashes there. Religious wars where they fund one side to kill the other side, and you got Somalians killing each other,
Yeah,
Sudanese killing each other. It's like,
some people think the reason uh, the U.S. and the U.K. run this foreign policy is to keep everyone divided over there to make Israel stronger. So that's the main reason they do it, because if the Middle East was strong and united, Israel supposedly would feel threatened.
mhm.
But
That is quite obvious. So, like, if there's unity all the way around them, then I think the Middle East unity would definitely, they'd be willing to, if they can get East support, they'd be willing to take on the West with no problem. And unfortunately, I think we're heading to that way anyway. But I want to also share something with you that also caught in my attention this week. So we had what looks like a successful test pilot for a interbanking blockchain network that is under the development of several countries. And so it says first cross-border payment made using the UAE's digital dirham. It says first ever digital transaction made directly to China through the mBridge platform. So here's a picture of one of their leaders, central bankers, pushing a button.
yeah,
And it's marked a significant moment by this past Monday by initiating the first cross-border payment using the UAE's central bank digital currency to the amount of 50 million dirham, which equated to about $13 or so million.
well,
It was sent to China.
I actually spoke about this in my video this morning, and the article that I picked up said it was 500 million or 134 million dollars equivalent. But I don't think the amount matters that much.
Yeah,
I think this just goes to show that they're not just talking about de-dollarization; they're actually doing it, and they've got the wherewithal to do it.
yeah.
I think it's important as well.
And to highlight, because I've been talking about how I believe a lot of the infrastructure for cross-border payment and all the blockchain label stuff that the masses have been sold on was intended to help and build out their infrastructure at the end of the day. And so this mBridge, which is what was used to execute this first trade or whatever, I talked about that, like last year, but I found an article highlighting more about mBridge cross-border CBDC has 23 central banks and the IMF as an observer. And here's just a list of all the banks, central banks that are all plugged in to this network. And of course, we got Asia, the Middle East, including Israel, with Saudi Arabia, and the U.S. is represented by the New York's Innovation Center at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. So these entities here, they got something ready to go for the after effects of whatever the banking contagion might look like. So, yeah, they're building out, they're moving forward, regardless of what we're not being told from the mainstream media. So, all the chaos is on the top, what we're forced to focus on, but underneath, they're building out whatever they plan on using to further enslave humanity, digitally speaking. So, all right, you ready to get into some Q&A or what?
Yeah, there's a super chat from Chris Conman, if you want to highlight it.
All right. Chris, appreciate it. It says, can you please explain what you mean by inflating away the debt? Will it lead to hyperinflation? Thanks.
Yeah, I can answer that if you,
Go ahead.
and then you can add on. Inflating away the debt means in the fiat currency system, the more debt you create, the more worthless it becomes. And why is that? Well, because the government borrows more, spends more, and of course they need a central bank to make that possible through QE and money printing. And what that does, it increases the supply of currency and credit in the system faster than the economy can keep up with it. Real things. So that it's the law of supply and demand, and that's what they did in after post World War II. They keep rates artificially low as well. They create debt. They were able to do it better then because the economy was growing, But when the economy is not growing and is as bad as it is now, and there's so much taxation, inflating away the debt can lead to hyperinflation, because people are going to wake up and they're going to realize that this is a deliberate policy. And that's when you have people running away from the currency because there's too much of it, through the creation of more debt. And that's what von Mises said, and it can happen overnight. It's just people getting rid of the currency. And I've noticed, Mike, I don't do it very often. My wife and I, we sometimes order stuff like Uber Eats. It's not something you do regularly, but I ordered the other day. I wanted, for some reason, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and just ordered a little bit of chicken, a little corn on the cob, and they sent the wrong drink, but it was like 14 pounds for just a little bit of chicken. And I mean, 5-10 years ago, that would have been like 6-7 pounds. So I think food prices are going through the roof, and it's not going to get better. Are you seeing anything like that in the US?
Oh, it's the same exact thing, man. Like, I noticed, like, the menu price, I'm very self-conscious of it now. Like, especially like feeding a family. Like, whenever I go to places, I look at the menu first just to see how much it's gone up. All my favorite places, they've all gone up. I understand you got to keep up with the cost of operations, labor, whatever. But at some point, you're going to have to choose. And that's what a lot of people are doing now. How much will you eat out? Or how much will you decide to lessen the quality of food you buy for yourself? Because it ultimately is going to impact your diet. Because most, like you say, Kentucky Fried Chicken, like, I haven't had that in a while, but I understand, like, the greasy chicken is good every now and then. But
I never have it, but I just felt like having it. And but talking about that, I sent you an article. I don't know if you have it, but I'll put it in the private chat. Even Joe Biden is noticing it, and he's blaming the greed of supermarkets, for higher food prices. He's not blaming himself for running huge deficits and sending hundreds of billions to Ukraine.
I got it here. Yeah, I saw that one. And that's where I've seen, even in Canada, like, was it in Trudeau was talking about needing to address, the grocery prices and stuff like that. So every nation that's experiencing this increased consumer prices at the pump, at the grocery store,
and the reason
wherever you go in life,
that's
where the government's going to start talking about needing to step in. Price controls, ultimately.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
The reason I brought up the food prices and like my experience is that, having read books about the German hyperinflation and also the post-revolutionary France hyperinflation, the first thing that really people feel is food prices. And it's the same thing now. So that's why I'm concerned, especially with the way the world is so crazy these days. It's a symptom that we're going to see a total collapse of the currencies. And that's in response to Chris Conman's question. I think we will get hyperinflation, and we're starting to see some of the symptoms of it already.
Yeah. And my little tidbit to add to that is, like, the best way I look at it is the inflating away the debt, expanding the monetary base, of course, to take care of today's problems, which were our government's attempts to reach into the future to extract value that was not there for today. And in doing so, by expanding the monetary base, it ultimately dilutes the purchasing power of your currency today and what you will not have in the future, because they've already exchanged that. They've
consumed. There. I mean, I think the Austrian School of Economics, they say that borrowing is consuming the future. It's consuming future production. So, and if you can't produce in the future and you're still borrowing, the currency is going to become worth less and less. And I think even these farmer protests could make things worse, because
grocery stores in France,
of course they'll blame the farmers for it, not not the globalist agenda of climate change. Oh, who's that? What's her name?
This is my granddog coming to tell me she's ready.
What's her name again?
Hennessy.
Yeah, Rudy's not here. Rudy's with my wife today. When when I came over to the study to do the Mike and Mary show, he was in his bed asleep for a change.
Yeah,
He's
he was
really
knocked out too. So
he's
watch
really,
this. We got somebody who's joined us, LBP, but I want to play this video. It's a 1-minute video from a guy named Robert Breedlove, who has a podcast called What is Bitcoin? And he made a great analogy referencing the problems we've had with the current monetary structure that it's priceless. And so I want to play it real quick. Let me grab the video. And it's just something that really makes you think.
Central banking is an institutionalized system of time theft, because ultimately the fruits of your labor are a product of your time or energy, right? Time and energy used synonymously here. We printed $6 trillion in 2020, right, in the U.S. The average annual U.S. salary is $60,000, roughly. That's 100 million years stolen, right, through the counterfeiting of currency. If each human works from the age of 20 to 70, so that's about 50 productive years per human, the counterfeiting of $6 trillion USD equals the stealing of 2 million human lives worth of productive labor. Right? This is to try to make it real, like it's a real massive problem. And then, of course, the plausible deniability that's built into inflation, right? It's Putin's fault. It's Beyonce's fault. It's the supply chains. It's everything but the central bank. So again, we're back to that romantic lie, the deception and the stealing going hand in hand. I think this is hopefully what we can deliver as Bitcoiners is.
All right, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Even though I'm not on the Bitcoin in the Bitcoin train, I agree with him with what he said. Central banking and central banking is a scam, and it's fraudulent. They're the only group of people, along with the commercial banks, who are like probably they are allied and sometimes own the central banks. They're the only ones who can create currency and credit out of thin air. If I wanted to lend you money, Mike, I have to have $100. I can't just write, "Oh, Mike, here, I'm just going to send you $100." Just
you had to go work and spend energy, talent, skill to acquire that, and then share it. They get a chance.
And here in England, the Bank of England started in 1694. And so the bankers and the people around them, they've had 300 plus years to basically extract all the wealth from the general public. This country, the general public, should be a lot wealthier than it is now. The reason why there's so much poverty and increasing here is because they're stealing it. And that's all there is. They don't have to work for it. A farmer, though, has to do all the work. They can't create rice or corn, or they can't create cows and eggs out of thin air.
So like the reason I played that video was just to highlight the theft and your productivity from your life. Your work life is being stolen from you, as well as your skills, talents, everything else, all encompassed is being stolen. And he's just pointing back over the last 4 years of the $6 trillion here in the U.S. Like literally, they reached into the future and created $6 trillion worth of unrealized productivity, and they brought it into today to save today's economy. While everybody, mom and pops, is still working for the same amount of wages, relatively speaking, that like will never ever allow them to compensate for the theft of their future that was stolen and brought forward, to where you're automatically on the losing end of the stick.
Yeah.
So I call it unrealized productivity theft. That's my little terminology for the stealing of your time, labor, and skill. Like. And then they brainwash us with the fact that if you put aside a certain amount in a retirement account, that same amount, $1 million, $2 million, I did videos on that. I think the latest survey said, people feel comfortable with 1.3 million, 1.5 million. And 3 years ago, it was just under $1 million. So by 2025, it's going to be, 2 million is what you'll need to feel comfortable, depending on your lifestyle, whatever. But that has to continue to go higher, because they didn't rent so far out and grabbed $6 trillion and brought it to today that they're not even done reaching into the future. They're going to try to reach as far as they can and bring in however much is needed to prop this system up, and just depending upon fiat currency, you are guaranteed to lose. It's no way around it because it's their weapon of choice.
Yeah, the other thing it does, it discourages people to work uh, because what's the point of working if you're not really earning something that you can live on? And investing becomes more difficult. And the other thing they use is taxation to control this inflation and to make sure that that people who do well don't do too well, so that they can get out of the system. It's just a nefarious this fiat currency central banking taxation. It's just really immoral, in my opinion.
Yeah. Man, financial repression at its finest. Let's get to some questions. I know what we got. We got a couple more minutes. I apologize for the long rants on my part, but yeah, just trying to make sense of everything that doesn't make sense. So highlight at Manigo64 or at RTD. It'll stand out in the chat. We'll jump on it, share our 2 cents on it real quick. And I'll also put the chat out there, or I'll put the link out there to join us. Feel free to join us and share a thought if you like to. Looks like we might have somebody. Mr. LBP is joining us. Let me put him on the screen here.
Is he delivering the post today?
I got to get rid of some. One second, LBP. Let me remove some stuff. Remove this if I can. Hi, show on screen. So LBP should be here. Let me see why he's not. Wrong person. LBP, I'm trying to get you on here, but it's not. You're not popping up. Might not be able to do that one. LBP is supposed to be right here, but he's not. LBP, I won't be able to get you on. It looks like. I apologize.
There's a question here, Mike. Please comment on hydrogen fuel in UK, USA, or Europe. To be honest, I'm not too familiar with hydrogen fuel. I know that in the UK, I think we have some kind of hydrogen fuel industry. Have you looked into that, Mike?
I have not. Not at all. Not at all. It's not my area of study.
I'll have a look into it, William. William PMCD. Another question here.
Yeah. Since pensions are basically Ponzi schemes, and with the possibility of great taking looming on the horizon, does it make sense to pay into pensions plan if you're in early?
Early 30s, in your early 30s. Well, I mean, if you work for a company and they contribute to your pension, I think you should, that's fine. But what I would say is maybe make sure you also have some kind of assets outside this financial system, like gold and silver or whatever you want. I remember I worked with a guy many years ago, and he collected watches, like expensive watches, and he had dozens, of Rolexes and all that. I think he's done well from that. And a lot of these things are called chattel, so they don't have capital gains tax. So maybe if your company provides you a private pension and they contribute to it, that's fine. But try to have an opt-out, some kind of insurance outside.
Yeah, self-insurance. Self-insurance is the best insurance. Have your Main Street insurance, in my opinion, which would be all the things that you're looking to protect yourself with and invest in your future. But ultimately, I remember I heard something about, I think it was a video about the Great Taking. There was somebody, the author was talking about, and basically saying that, you don't own none of that stuff. None of that stuff is yours. Like, it's literally like, you're the middleman between, you paid for it, but then the fiduciaries and the holders of it, they benefit from it.
Yeah, legally, if there's a crisis, you'll be left holding the bag. There's another question here from Bitrio.
How is this Bitrio? Here we go. How are we to transact with each other over the internet, across borders, etc., without a trusted intermediary?
I guess we won't. That's why I think maybe being part of a small community is important. Yeah, it's not, the internet is well and good, but um, they could switch off the internet very easily. The people who created the internet, which is like the U.S. deep state.
Yeah, and also I think this is where the speculation side comes in. Like as of now, there are, of course, everybody's favorite towards Bitcoin and stuff like that. But then again, like even for myself, as like a backup and worst case scenario, having some exposure to that would allow me to be able to transact. So I'm not against it, but then again, I'm not out here encouraging people to go bet your house on it like Sailor. You know what I'm saying? Sell your house, mortgage your
Yeah.
kids, and go get your holding.
Yeah. I think what Clive Thompson, who I have on quite a few times, says is to diversify a little bit. Have don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, I do agree.
Jiddu the Voice, do you know what tax lawyers think about the Great Taking? Thank you. No, I don't know what the tax lawyers think, but I think David Rogers Webb, he's spoken to a lot of big investors and to people like that, and they kind of just listened and didn't say anything. I would say a lot of them probably haven't heard of it, the Great Taking, and a lot of them are probably they're just doing their job and they're just earning a living. So I don't think they do Jiddu the Voice, but that's just speculation.
Yeah, somebody says check out Abbott's involvement with the World Economic Forum. I wouldn't be surprised. Nothing surprised me at this current moment.
Well, apparently, when the Texas thing was kicking off last week, he was actually in India. So,
yeah, Texas is a big economy. It is a big economy, but it is a
12th biggest economy in the world, Texas.
Right, which is pretty massive for it being a state. What else we got? Atoms frothing at the mouth during World War II. People still traded outside the ration books. How could that look in the future? During World War II, people still traded outside of ration books. How could that look in the future?
Well, that's black market, isn't it? I mean, here in England, they had ration books even after the war. And yeah, there's a black market. My sister's mother-in-law, I saw her during Christmas in Switzerland. She grew up in Switzerland during the war in the mountains, and she said she was about 5 or 6, and her mom sent her to get eggs, or was it eggs? And she went in there, and all the adults and the guy who sold the eggs said, "So you've come for the black eggs?" And she said, "No, eggs, no butter." She went for it. And she said, "They said you've come for the black butter." Someone said next to her, and then she went back home and said, "Mom, they wanted to sell me black butter." And she said, it was black market. So that's what you have, black market. So,
oh man, and that's where it seems very common that there's an alternative market that always pops up when the primary market is distorted.
Apparently, B.R. Williams says Martin Armstrong says the Great Taking is BS. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's BS. I think David Rogers Webb is legitimate and he's done his homework. I mean, I started following Martin Armstrong back when he was still in prison, and he used to write from prison. And I don't agree with everything he says, but anyway.
Right. And apparently, his computer, whatever the computer he has that has software that's able to, I don't know, predict or forecast models, is like, you know what I'm saying? Okay, so once again, I mean, it could be a product he's selling, but everybody know where we're heading. It's just a matter of how, what, when, where. We can't quite figure that out. That's up for God to determine all that. But what else? All right, I don't see more questions about the hour point. What are we looking at? What's coming ahead? We in February now. What should we keep an eye on? What do you keep an eye on, you think?
Yeah, I guess the geopolitical situation. Again, the bond market. See how the market reacts on Monday. I mean, it's reacting today already to this non-farm payroll number. Yeah, and the farmers' situation in Europe, I think that could escalate. And I'm sure we'll probably get in the beginning of the month. We always get a lot of economic statistics. We got non-farm payroll today, and it's going to continue the next week or two.
Yeah. All right. Well, that sounds about right. So all those things I'll definitely keep my eyes on, and whatever else comes about, because there's always opportunity of them throwing a curveball out the blue where we were like, I didn't see that coming. So, all right, my good people, thank you for joining us for the Mike and Mario show this Friday. Hope you guys found some value out of the back and forth here. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you share this with your fellow friends and family. Allow them to get an alternative perspective on what's really happening. And just give people a chance to find out some truth, because they ain't gonna get it from the mainstream media. So, all right, be blessed, be safe, and we'll see you guys later.